Hey, this is Joe from Personas coming to you from my frigid studio. It is late January when I'm shooting this, and it is cold in here, and I have to turn the heat off, otherwise these videos sound like this. And I'm not a monster, so I freeze for your benefit. Okay, real quickly, let's go through, because I'm cold. I wish this was an actual vintage hardware EQ because they tend to warm up a room. I don't have that. But let's look at VintageEQ, which is another of the EQs that comes with Studio One. So if you're new, brand spanking new to Studio One, you may only be using this EQ here, which is Pro EQ, which is delightful and can do many things. You could just use Pro EQ for the rest of your life and be just fine. However, there are times when you want a different flavor, a different sound, or just a different functionality, or even a different look. All of those are valid, and the Vintage EQ is one of the ones that I use all the time. So in the last video, I talked about the FET compressor, which is delightful, and we used it on this drum mix here. Makes me want to go boom, 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 boom. I can't do that, sorry. But okay, so we got, that compressor's off. So that is compressor. If we click on this button here, we can see everything in Fat Channel. So Fat Channel is, just so you know, the name of the plugin. You can see it over here in our plugin list. Within Fat Channel, we can have one compressor and one EQ, and we can choose from a few different options. If you are a Sphere member, you get a whole bunch of options, as you can see here, or if you've purchased this Fat Channel Collection, I believe it's called, bundle. Same with EQ, it comes with a bunch of different compressors and a bunch of different EQs. However, if you only own Studio One, you should have standard, passive, and vintage for the EQs, and you should have standard, tube, and FET for the compressors. Really, really useful. Those are all I used for a long time. Then I finally got the extra ones. So Vintage EQ is, when I start up Fat Channel, Vintage EQ is the EQ that I have as my default. It is a really cool sounding EQ. I'm going to give you a quick tour of how to use it. Now you might think, Joe, it's an EQ, what's there to know? Well, if you're thinking that, you probably already know how to use it. However, equalizers can be complicated, and there's a few things you got to know about how this works, because there's things that it does really well, and there's things I wouldn't use this for. So let's dive in. I'm going to first just simplify by clicking that button to simplify it down to just one component, and then I have to click on EQ to show that. Look, it slides over like a slideshow. Whee! Okay, so Vintage EQ obviously is based off of an analog EQ. And this is a 4-band EQ. So we can learn a lot by taking a moment just to look at what's happening on the screen, okay? So we have 4 knobs. That means we have 4 different groups of frequencies that we can adjust. What frequencies do each of those knobs adjust? Well, that's a good question. Let's see. The bottom knob looks like it affects these 4 and only these 4, right? The second knob, LMF, stands for low mid, has 360, 700, 1.6K. The high mid has 3.2K, 4.8K, and 7.2K. And then the high frequency doesn't have any frequencies. Okay, so that's a question mark. We'll answer that in a second. Secondly, what do we notice by looking at the bottom section where we list out the names of these bands? These are called bands, different frequency bands. This is the LF, or low frequency, and we see this funny little like tuning fork shape. Here we've got a weird circle inside of a line. Another one here in a slightly different place, and then I don't know if you can see that one. This looks like a tuning fork going the other way. These are actually visualizations. You'll actually find these on hardware analog EQs telling you what this does. So this and this, the low frequency and the high frequency, these are called shelving filters. I think that's technically what they're called. So what this means is, this is our EQ line, and as we turn this up or down, it's turning up and down the frequency that we choose here with the button, but it's also turning up and down everything below that. So visually, let's call on our friend Pro EQ to come back and play for a minute. You can do this in Pro EQ as well. On this low frequency, we have a drop down to change it to a shelf, and this is what that looks like. So as we boost, and if we set this to say 220-ish, we can see we're boosting starting at 220, but then everything below 220 gets boosted. So it's a big old honking boost, right? Same with the cut. It's not just cutting at 220, it's cutting at 220 and below. And there's a slope to it, so it's it's not cutting a bunch at 220, and it gets progressively more as you go. And that slope can change here, so we can make it more gentle. We can make it more steep, okay? So that's, you may think, well, why would I want it? Well, why would I want to do Vintage EQ when I can do it here inside of Pro EQ? I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so this we know is a shelving EQ on the low end, and we have the same thing on the high end. So the exact same thing, just flipped. Everything above this, whatever frequency this is, gets shelved. Now, that's a big question. I know what frequencies I have for the bottom, can't count, bottom 3 bands. What frequency is it on the top one? I think it's like 16K. On the one hand, doesn't matter. You don't need to know. But on the other hand, I have different fingers. Kidding, that's a dad joke. Let's press F1 and pull up the interactive manual, which, if you did know that exists, it's pretty handy. It pulls up the manual for Fat Channel XT, which is pretty dope, as the kids say. And if I come in, yeah, I don't think it's going to give me much. Okay. It tells me that it has magical tone. Doesn't tell me what frequencies it is. I believe I tried to research this and find what we modeled this after and what that high frequency was. And I believe, don't hold me to this, but I believe it was around 16K, 12 to 16, I think. And if you listen to it, and we'll listen to it in a second, it does have a lot of high frequency. It's very high. So 8K here, the 7.2K on this high mid is pretty high. That's pretty crispy. So this one is a lot higher than that. And it's a shelf, so it's grabbing everything. Big picture, doesn't matter what the frequency is. It's either the right one for you or it's not, which leads me to my next point about why this, for me, is so helpful. There's a part of this where this EQ, if you set this EQ and a Pro EQ to exactly the same settings, if you could figure out scientifically exactly the same EQ curve for both, there would be a difference in sound. What that difference is, it's hard to quantify, but this would sound more like it's running through an analog circuit, whereas the Pro EQ, I'm going to say those backwards, the Pro EQ is what we would call clean or surgical or transparent. It's not going to mess with the sound other than just affecting the frequencies. That's kind of the goal. Whereas an old EQ, back in the day when we only had analog EQs, it had a sound even if you just turned it on and didn't run anything through it, because it's going through all these different circuits and transistors and transformers and all those other words that I don't know. So there was just an inherent sound. And then as you turn the knobs, obviously each of those had their own kind of sound too, because you're manipulating the sound in the physical world, and it has lots of artifacts. Ironically, I think a lot of EQ manufacturers back, half century ago, we're trying to make them as clean as possible. And now we reach for emulations of those that are not clean at all, because we've got plenty of clean. We want something that adds a vibe and a different sort of a sound. So for me, that part of it it's just a small piece of the puzzle, but it is a piece of the puzzle here. If you run, especially if you're like driving this EQ pretty hard, so you hit it with a pretty high level of signal, or you crank one of the knobs on here, it does have a little bit of, I've heard a little bit of a crunchiness there, where it's like overdriving those internal circuits. And by the way, if you ever see in Studio One this Stace, raise your hand if you can't talk, this state space logo here, that's a technology that we use to model things like the actual EQ that this was modeled after. You'll see that in the other models inside of Fat Channel. You'll see that inside of Ampire. I believe it's inside of Analog Delay as well. It's a way of modeling a piece of electronics by modeling each individual electrical component. So it behaves a lot like the original, because instead of just sending a signal through an old EQ and measuring the before and after, we're actually going a step further and creating the capacitor, creating an electronic version of that transformer and all the different components. And then we build it in that virtual world, and it behaves very much in all the weird little idiosyncrasies that you get with this actual piece of hardware. It behaves that way, which is, to me, really interesting. But the big picture is, it sounds a little bit different, and you'll just have to mess with it to see for yourself. But the big reason why I like Vintage EQ over a Pro EQ, or why I would reach for Vintage EQ instead of a Pro EQ, is because it's limiting my options. We have so many options just in day-to-day life. Like I've read somewhere, we make more decisions in a day than our great-grandparents probably made in a year, because we're inundated with Lots of information. We have devices everywhere. Just inside of this mix, just inside what we can see on this screen, I can do about 1,000 different things. I can adjust each of those channels. I can solo, I can mute, I can turn on the monitor thing, I can change the routing, I can add sends, I can add inserts. I can do so many things from here. Good golly, no wonder we get overwhelmed. So for me, when I can reach for a tool, by the way, you like my name tag? You can't read it. It says Joe. If I can reach for a tool that will limit my options, I kind of like that. And the people who designed these EQs are much smarter than me, and they chose frequencies that make a lot of sense. So frequencies that they found, I don't know, I didn't talk to them, but it seems to me as I use this that, oh, these are frequencies I would have picked too. If you gave me only 4 low frequencies, only 3 low mids, and 3 upper mids, it's pretty close to what I would grab for. So like 1.6K absolutely has to be on there. 220, 110, 60 have to be on there. 30, I don't know about 30. 360 is a magical frequency. It can bring out a lot of warmth without creating mud. 700 is kind of the middle range of like vocals, guitars, pianos when it's building up too much. You can pull that down to smooth things out. 3K and 4K, it's more like 3 and 5K here. They're really great for taming harshness on guitars and vocals that are just too nasal and obnoxious. 7K is pretty airy on the top end of a vocal or a guitar, and then this is like a very kind of airy, crispy top end up here. 220 is just lots of warmth, lots of low mids and lows. 110, we're getting down to more like the honky frequencies that we might want to boost or cut. And then 60 is the really low, like chest thumping low end that we might want to emphasize or turn down. So my default with, let me see actually. What are my default settings for Pro EQ? These come out of the box, I think, slightly different. I set it to, I'm always reaching for 220, 360, 7.2K. So I save that by using stored as default preset. So when I open this up, it's on because I know I'm going to use it. Or even if I'm not going to use it, it's running through it. And in my head, that's nice. And then I can just turn the knobs because that's typically the ones I choose most of the time. So this gives me a handful of options. If the drums are a little boxy, for example, that doesn't sound right. I've lost my kick drum. What happened? Oh, that's funny. We still had our Pro EQ on. That's my mistake. I was wondering why it sounded like hot garbage. Okay, now if I hit play, maybe I want to take that kind of 360 range and pull it down so it has a little more, almost a smiley curve to the drum kit, which can sound nice on drums specifically. But maybe that, I want a little more like low end on that kick drum, like a whoof, hit the subwoofer. I don't have one, but hit the subwoofer really hard. Maybe I'll go to 60 and turn that up. It's very low. I don't hear a lot of it. We didn't capture a lot of it in the recording. But if we come up to 220, we'll get a lot more just general low end out of this, which might be too much, but let's try it. And if we try 100, it won't be quite as much. And what's great about this is I would rarely go in and just boost 110 hertz on a drum kit because that's like a hooting whoop whoop sort of a frequency. But 110 and below, that's going to include things like 80, which sounds really great on the low end in drums, and 60 and 50. And we've got all of that covered, which is super cool. And then on the upper mids, if I've got like, I want to make the cymbals a little brighter, let's compare the 7.2 with this high frequency shelf. I mean, I boosted that a lot, and it sounded pretty good. Like it was a fairly pleasant sound, even boosted, what I would say is probably a little too much. It brought out the snare. It did a lot of great things to the sound. Now let's boost the high shelf and see what that sounds like. To my ear, it's fairly similar. So maybe it's not much higher than 7, but you've got both. So if I just need to boost kind of that upper mid-range to bring out some clarity, but I don't need a lot of the really, really bright stuff, I can do some sort of combination of both. But the idea here is I only have so many options, and so I just pick the option that works. I can't see physically what's happening on the spectrum analyzer, and that can be helpful because it forces me to listen with these things instead of listening with my eyeballs, and I'm probably going to make a better decision. However, there are situations where if there's like a ringing in the snare drum where it's going ding, 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 I'm not going to fix that with this EQ. It's not the right tool for the job because it's generally a wider EQ. I can't adjust the width. What I would want in that situation is something like Pro EQ, and I'd want to go find that ringing frequency with a really narrow Q, a narrow width, and then pull that down, right? And I can find that exact frequency, like it's exactly, 265 hertz is ringing. I can find that and pull that down. So for me, that's my workflow. For general kind of tone shaping, I use EQs like this. For specific frequency stuff that I need to probably fix and address, I'll use Pro EQ. And obviously Pro EQ is great if I need to do dynamic EQ and all of that, which is a subject of another video for another time. But I encourage you, if you have not messed with Vintage EQ, it's a great one to get your feet wet with because there's not that many controls. And it's hard to make this thing sound bad, which I know sounds like a marketing thing, but like legitimately, it's hard to jack things up with this because it just has a nice sound to it, and they've picked all these nice frequencies, so it's harder to screw it up because you have limited choices. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Go check out Vintage EQ, and I'll see you in the next one.